Hi, and welcome to the third video in our PowerShell Active Directory PSWriteHTML dashboard video series. So far in the last video, I'm going to show you guys what we have so far. So this is what we've built so far. So we have a forest page. So let me just zoom in here so you guys can probably see it a little bit better. So we have a forest page, which gives us our information on our forest in Active Directory. And we also added tabs. So if you do have more than one domain, you would actually see multiple tabs here with your domains listed. We get all the domain controllers, we get the default domain password policy, and the fine-grained password policies. And we can actually see what they look like here. And what we're going to be doing today is actually expanding on this domain page and adding in some of our users that we might want to take a look at. So that would include the disabled users, locked out users, and expired users as well. Right now it has the buttons. Our final version, we will probably actually take out the buttons here. So this is what we're actually adding in today. Should be a quick video today. So it should not be too long, but this is just to show you guys what's possible. We're going to be adding in some groups in a little bit later. We will probably add a section probably for all users as well. But this is pretty much what you'd really want to look at anyways. For myself as a system administrator, if I get asked, I'll usually get asked reports for like status on users. This is a very quick way to be able to provide those reports to management in a dashboard that could be easily available to them with a search feature, so they can actually look up test, and only the test employee will look up. So they can look up a specific user, see if they're disabled, see if they're locked out, or see if they are expired. And in here, you would even get the last logon date as well as the account expiration date when the account actually expired. We actually store that info. So let's go ahead and let's actually get started here. So we're actually going to close this tab so we don't get confused. We're going to keep our old tab open. I'm just going to delete this HTML page, and we're going to be actually recreating that from scratch here. So we actually have our script from our last video. This is exactly where we are going to be taking off. So the first thing that we actually need to do, of course, is get the users for all of our domains. Now, we're going to have to do this for all of our domains because we might have users on one of our multiple domains, but we might also have users on every domain that we have. So we want to make sure that we get them all. So we're going to want to make sure that we actually put that in our for each loop for each domain in domains. We're going to want to grab all of them here. So the easiest way to grab all the users in your domain is actually creating a variable, of course, called users. And we're going to be doing a get-add user. And then what I like to do is do a filter star. Now, oftentimes, the other thing that people will often do is a properties star to get all the properties. Now, you can do this. The only thing is, if you do have a very large Active Directory environment, this will take a very long time. So in an environment that I had where we were dealing with thousands and thousands of user accounts, if you're putting in properties star, this can take upwards of like 5 to 10 minutes to run. Now, what I actually recommend is creating another variable where we're going to be storing the properties that we actually want to pull back for our users. And that brings it from like 5 to 10 minutes down to a simple minute approximately, maybe even under a minute. You can always do the measure command to actually compare the two in your environment. See if you can pull back all the properties. If you have a small environment, pulling back all the properties is not a bad idea. You never have to add to it. Just be aware if your environment does scale to a very large environment, the property star is probably not the way you actually want to go. And then we want to do a server, and we're going to want to specify domain. And we're going to be changing the properties star in just a minute here. So what we actually want to do is know what properties we actually want to get. So this is usually where I use the console to do this. So what I'll do is I'll do a get-add user on identity oops, on identity employee 1, and then server is going to be on domain. And there is our properties by default. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a properties star, and we're going to figure out which properties we actually want to get. We do get a lot of properties back. So the thing is, I already have this list created here. So when you actually go through this, now this might actually change. This list might change based on what you need in your dashboard. So that is a very, very key thing. Things can change depending on your company that you're in or what you really want for your home lab. But the thing that I like to do is create a variable called user properties, and we're going to make that an array here. So that's just the @ symbol, open and close parentheses. And we're going to store all of our values inside of single quotes here. Now we're going to store a whole bunch. I don't want you guys to watch me type all of these by hand, so I will copy paste these in here, and I will read them off to you so you guys know exactly what it is. So I actually end up pulling back the account expiration date, the account lockout time, created, which is when the user is actually created, the department, the description, the display name, email address, employee ID, the enabled field, last logon date, locked out, office, password last set, SAM account name, and title. Now the last logon date will actually be in a date format, so that is really good. Locked out is actually a true or false value, same as enabled, but that's why we actually grab the account expiration date will actually be in a date time format, and the account lockout time will also be in a date time format. These are all very important to be able to distinguish disabled accounts. We're going to be able to determine that with the enabled field. We're also going to be able to use the locked out field to determine if an account is locked out or not. And then the account expiration date, we can see an account is expired or not based on the account expiration date. So those are all really, really important properties to at least pull back those. So the account expiration date, I would say, is definitely a must. If you're getting locked out users, account lockout time is a very good tool to have. The enabled and the locked out fields are all extremely important to pull back in order for this to work. Then all the other fields are pretty much to your leisure on what you actually want to be able to display back to the user. Now you might get some accounts that you might not necessarily want to get back in your query. If that ever happens, what I would usually do is set up a pipe here and exclude those users. I don't have any in my environment today. Now that's if you really wanted to exclude those. Sometimes it is good to have those come up anyways. This way you have a full visibility on your domain. You don't have any exclusions. That's how I would recommend doing the dashboard. But there are extra ways that you can filter out certain accounts if you don't want them to be visible in your dashboard. Because sometimes if you have a cloud environment, you'll have accounts that are actually disabled because that's how they are actually created. They are by default disabled, especially if you're dealing with Teams voice with auto attendance. Those accounts are usually disabled by default. So that's just a little aside there. So let's actually keep going. So once we actually get all of our users, all we need to do is add another member to our object here. So let's go ahead. Let's copy the last add member statement here. And we're just going to name it users. And we're going to supply our users field here. So now that we actually get all of our users, we can actually go ahead and run this and see if it works. It's just running. It's already all done. Now, again, this environment isn't that big, but here's all of our users' information that we actually got back. But if we actually go look in all domain info, you will actually see that we get all the info here and we have our users, and then that's inside of an array here with all the entries. So, or inside of a hash table or a dictionary. Basically, it is an array of all your users in here. So what we actually want to do now is go through all of these users, or actually just go through all the domains and display the users that have those certain conditions. So what we actually want to do now is create just a new section in our HTML page or our dashboard for users. And then we're going to create 3 separate panes, one for disabled, one for locked out, and one for expired users. So let's go ahead and let's just create our new section under the password policies section. So we're going to have a new HTML section. The header text is going to be users. Now I always like to make this invisible right off the bat, and then we're going to open and close the curly brackets. And let's go ahead and let's create our 3 sections right away. So let's do a new HTML section, header text. We're going to put that to disabled users. And this one's going to be visible. And then we're going to have our new HTML panel. And this one, we like to make it invisible just to match the standard that we have currently going on. And now all I do is I copy the section that we have for disabled users. I'm just going to paste it in 2 more times and just change it to locked out users and expired users. So there it is. And then all I'm going to do is actually just change the URL to part 3 here. So let's see what our file actually, or our dashboard actually looks like now. So now it won't be displaying any of users. It's just basically we've created the panels on which we are going to actually display our users. So we have our disabled users, locked out users, and expired users here. Let me just zoom in here so you guys can actually read them. So we're going to actually put our users in here now. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So where I actually like to put this is actually just in the new HTML section users. I like to put everything just right here. And this is where we're going to put all of our filtering on our user objects. So what we're actually going to be doing here is just creating our disabled users variable. So disabled users variable, and we're going to make that equal to our domain dot users. So if we actually go look at this, so we have domain here, and we have the all domain info. So it's going to loop through all these domains, and then similar to how we were going here, we're going to be looking at the users here. And then what we can actually do is then we can pipe this to where object enabled is equal to false. So we know that if enabled is false, the user is actually disabled. So that actually works fine there. And then what we actually want to do is we want to do this for locked out users and expired users with the proper spacing here. So we can paste that again. So let's change this one to locked out users and change this one to expired users. Now locked out users is where the object locked out is equal to true. And then the expired users is where the object of account expiration date is less than a variable wrapper of get date, because that will get today's date. So if the expiration date is less than today's date, the account is actually expired. So now we can actually go ahead and put these into tables right away. So if we do a table here, we do a data table, disabled users, and we can actually go ahead and just right away hide footer, hide buttons. And we can actually copy paste this once again and just change the disabled users here to locked out users. And here is going to be expired users. So here, if we actually run this right now, we will see that we get a lot of information back for these users. So there it is. Now it's going to look a little bit messy because of the zoom that we have on here. Now you're going to notice that it looks very, very messy at this point. Just because of the way that we actually filtered. So you're going to notice that this isn't super useful. And where we had in our example, we actually had the names of the people. It was a lot more useful here. So what we're actually going to be doing is we need to actually filter or select very specific fields and create tables for these. So what I like to do is create a disabled users table, and that we're going to make equal to disabled users, and we're going to pipe that to a select statement or select object. And then what I like to do is do a select name, title, SAM account name, the enabled field, last logon date, and then the distinguished name. I like to have distinguished name in all my tables. Just this way I can see exactly what OU it's in. And this way it just gives me a lot more visibility. So if we actually go right away and just look at the disabled users now compared to what the other two look like, we actually go ahead and we run this, we're going to see that it looks a lot cleaner. So it's just popping up now. But now if we actually go ahead and we look at the disabled users fields here, we can actually easily tell which users are disabled compared to the locked out users, because locked out users by default is showing us the account expiration date, because that is the first property we pulled back with our users, because users, the properties are set up in an alphabetical order. Therefore, account expiration date is actually the first value that we see. And you can see we have tons of values, but it's taking us forever to actually be able to go see which one it actually is. So that's where that's a little bit of not a very, very great time. So let's go ahead and let's actually change all of these to do the exact same thing. So we're going to do a locked out users table, and we're going to make that equal to locked out users where object, oh, sorry, it's going to be select object, and we're going to do this one. So I actually do these a little bit differently, just based on the thing that we're actually looking at. So locked out users, what I'm actually interested in is the name and the account lockout time first. So those will be the first two that I put, and then I'll put in all the other information. So I'll put title here. What I might actually even like on locked out users is the office location. And then we will do the SAM account name. And then what I like to also have is just enabled, see if they're enabled or disabled, because if they are disabled, if they're locked out, I'm not too worried, because it's not going to be a ticket. And then the distinguished name, just once again, see exactly where they are in what OU. And then we're going to have the exact same thing here for expired users. Now, I actually purposely did something wrong with the expired users, and we're going to see that really quickly here. Once we actually go back and look at our expired users. So for expired users, what I like to do is the name and then the account expiration date instead of the account lockout time. And then the rest stays the same. So let's go ahead and let's just change all of these to the table versions. And let's go ahead and let's take a look at what it looks like, and especially the expired users. This is where we're going to see a bit of a problem, because we will see that every user, according to this, is actually expired. Now, actually, only one of these is actually expired, but we don't know which one it is because account expiration date is blank on some of them. So technically, account expiration date of blank is less than today's date. So what we actually need to do is on the expired users, what we actually like to do here is, now you can do this with an and, or you can do a double pipe here, where the account expiration date is not equal to null. This will just simplify you guys being able to see it. So first we look for all of the objects that don't, so basically that have an account expiration date. If it has an account expiration date, if it's less than today's date, then we pull it back as an expired user. And if we go ahead and we look at it now, we will only see one user in that table, which is the employee 1. And we can see the account expiration date was December 1st, and today's date is December 5th. So we can actually see exactly that user. We can see the locked out user. We can see the lockout time, which is today's date at 5:31. I locked out this user right before making this video. And then we have the disabled users. We can see that this test user is disabled. And we have the two system users that are disabled by default, but I keep them in there because I want to see them. Just this way I can actually have a full view of my Active Directory environment. So that is how to add all of your users that you really want to pay attention to in Active Directory to your dashboard. If you guys want to see something else that you guys want to be able to monitor in your Active Directory environment, please let me know in the comment section down below, and we can add it into this dashboard and make it a part of the series. And this way everyone can benefit from your request and what you actually need to monitor. Because if you have to monitor it, chances are maybe someone else doesn't know about it or actually needs to monitor it as well. So everyone kind of benefits from the feedback from the community. Also, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out. And I will see you guys on the next video.